Yep. I just wanted to tell everybody thank you for coming out today for Lisa Black. As a reminder, we do have our St. Patrick's Day next Friday. The book club had to adjust their lineup, so the new listing is in the back there if you'd like to take a look at it. And then I'll leave the floor to Lisa Black.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate the invitation. Am I too loud? Can you? No, it's fine? Okay, because it feels like I'm booming. Okay, I was kind of expecting a book club, you know, like a little kind of intimate. So I didn't really prepare a speech, but oh well, I've done this enough times. I will try and wing it. First, to tell you who I am, I have published 18 traditionally published novels of suspense. They're fiction. My first one was published in 2005. My last one just came out on February 20th. The fourth, which is the third in the Locard Institute series, and the fourth will be out next year. I have also worked for the Cape Coral Police Department for 24 years. Well, it'll be 24 on May 1st. And I'm not a sworn officer. I'm a civilian employee. I'm in forensics, in the forensics unit. Before that, I worked for the coroner's office in Cleveland, Ohio, which is now a medical examiner's office. And if anybody wants to check my story, you'll say, ha, it's not a coroner's office. Well, when I was there, it was a coroner's office. They have since changed. And then I loved it there. It was like my dream job. I worked in the trace evidence department. I did hairs and fibers, gunshot residue, a lot of examination of victims' clothing, and it was like my dream job. It was it was very, very interesting working in a morgue. And then my husband, who grew up like 10 minutes from where I did, got fed up with Cleveland weather and dragged me 1,400 miles down here. And suddenly I had no job, no friends, no family, so I started writing again. I had written amateur sleuth novels before I worked at the coroner's office, but I didn't have time when I was there. So I started writing again just to stay sane, because it kept my mind off how homesick I was. So, plus, in the meantime, I had gone back to school, got a degree in biology to go into forensics. So, because my first degree was in political science, because I went to Washington, D.C., and I fell in love with the buildings and all the monuments and the marble. Not what people actually did there. What people did there bored me silly. So I should have been an architect, but I learned that involved math, so I said, okay, I'm not being an architect. And so, yeah, instead I majored in political science, graduated with no marketable skills whatsoever, except typing, and became a secretary for 10 years. So I was personnel secretary at a gerontological institute. So anyway, in the meantime, before we moved down here, I had gotten the degree in biology, started working at the coroner's office, and so it just made sense to me to apply the forensic perspective to telling the mystery story. Well, in the meantime, a little show called CSI had premiered, and the stars aligned, and my first book was published then in 2005. So, okay, it's this current series with, okay, so I wrote my first two books. I was with HarperCollins for four books. Then they dropped me because my sales, I wasn't getting on the bestsellers list. I had 3 books with Severn House, and I was working on the last book. And it involved, and I sent like the first 7 chapters to my agent, and she said, I don't think it's suspenseful enough. I don't really like it. And I said, okay, the plot was, my character comes back from a late night call. She's a forensic scientist. She comes back from a scene, finds the cooling body of, there should be 2 deskmen on duty. One is missing. The other is dead, beaten to death with the word confess written in blood over his head. So I said, okay, she's creeping around a morgue in the middle of the night by herself looking for the killer of her coworker, whose body she just stumbled over. I don't think I can make it more suspenseful. I really don't. So I threw it aside, and in frustration, I wrote this scene that had been rattling around in my head for like 3 years, and it involved, what if there's a man who takes the worst of the worst of the city's criminals, the kind that never get convicted because they never make it into court because they never leave enough witnesses. And he doesn't hate them, he doesn't enjoy killing, he knows that they're just a product of their environment. So he takes them down, sets them down and listens to them and plies them with their favorite food and drink. He tells them it's a pilot program. And, and just, then when they're about as relaxed and happy as it is possible for them to get in this world, he puts 3 bullets in the back of their head. And said, because this to him is the responsible and humane thing to do. And I thought, well, just to make it more interesting, what if this man is a homicide detective? So this little sideline of his is going quite swimmingly until a forensic scientist by the name of Maggie Gardner picks up his trail. Well, now he has quite the ethical dilemma. So I sent this to my agent. She said, I love it, write the rest of it. And I'm like, okay. Except I had no idea what was going to happen in the rest of the book. So I had to do that, and that became the 6 books of the Gardner and Renner series. And so after that, I wanted to move my characters out of Cleveland. I love Cleveland. I really enjoyed setting books there because there's so much history and so much, such interesting things that go on in Cleveland. I mean, you have the port, you have the lake, you have 4 definite seasons, most of which involve something unpleasant, like like lots of snow, lots of rain, lots of mud, and humidity. So, but I thought, okay, I got this idea. I thought, what if my character is like Jack Reacher, for those of you who have read Lee Child. I thought, okay, my character's going to be Jack Reacher if Jack Reacher was a 40-ish ex-housewife with no martial arts training. And I thought she's just going to move all over, helping out friends and such like. So I wrote the first book like that and sent it to my agent, who wasn't crazy about it, but she sent it to my editor, and my editor said, nope, don't want it. But you know what we'd really like? We'd like a jet-setting pathologist who works on cases of the rich and famous. I said, okay, such a creature does not exist in reality, right? So we worked on that for a while, and that's how the Locard Institute series was born. So I've been in forensics, obviously, for almost 30 years now, and I've taken plenty of training and classes and extra education, so I did know something about that. About there are agencies some big agencies that do that kind of training, and they have facilities, and then they can come if you get enough people in your area to participate. An agency can host classes, and they'll come and train. So I thought, okay, we got the Locard Institute, so they're like 1/3 training for law enforcement or forensic scientists or whoever wants to come. We're like students, anybody. 1/3 research. They have professors in all these different aspects, from DNA to ballistics to hairs and fibers to statistical analysis to anything. And so they all have their own little research projects that they're doing to further science of forensics. And then 1/3 private cases, and that's of course the fun part. That's going to be the part where the books are, that they travel all over and can work on these rich and famous cases. So the first book in the Locard Institute dealt with my character Ellie, who worked the evidence response team for the FBI, response to this incredibly gorgeous mansion. People ask me where I come up with these things. So I Google richest houses in the United States, and I found one in like Texas or something, so I kind of modeled it off. I Google most expensive coffee maker, and came up with this one that was called the Simonton. So And they got pictures, shopping, so I could, add that in. So that's how I do that. So anyway, she responds to this incredibly gorgeous mansion where this baby, 4 months old, has disappeared out of his crib in the middle of the day. There's nobody else in the house, except like the mother and the daughter. A friend had just visited. There's exterior cameras that don't show anybody, who isn't supposed to be there coming to the house. So there's just nothing. I mean, this baby's just gone. And so, but when she walks in, she realizes that the mother, who's a congressional research assistant, and the father is a lobbyist who has his own lobbying firm. The mother is her cousin that she spent part of her youth living with. So, there's this family connection, and then it turns out to have something to do, because more children start being kidnapped, it has something to do with the father's lobbying client. Then the second one actually takes place at the Locard Institute, where it's Ellie's first day on the job, and she's so excited, and she's going to teach this class on, I forget what it was now, but she's going to teach this class. And Rachel is my other character. She's the dean of the dean of education. She's like the assistant, one of the 2 assistant directors of the Locard. She's teaching a class on DNA collection from crime scenes, documentation of crime scenes. And so Ellie's going to be teaching her class, and she's really excited to have this new job. And she's bought a house, like practically sight unseen, on the shores of Chesapeake Bay. And the woman she's replacing, who nobody really liked, winds up dead in a supply closet. And it kind of looks like an accident, but it seems weird that, such a simple accident could, kill this woman. So they're not crazy. Her and Rachel aren't crazy about this, but they've got all these students, they've got people, they've got to, show must go on, you've got to finish your job. Well, then the next day, a student turns up dead, and then they're like, okay, something's definitely wrong here. And so that book was a lot of fun, actually. I really like that one so far, because it just has the different students and people from all areas, of all ages and races and genders and everything, and coming here for this class, and what can happen with that. And then of course everybody who works there, including Rachel and Ellie, are technically suspects. So Ellie's ex-husband is running the crime scene for the FBI. So this involves all these complications. And then the third one that just came out on February 20th, I described as the Laci Peterson case if Laci Peterson's father was Bill Gates. So it's kind of the same thing. A hugely pregnant young woman who she likes to work on, she works for her father, everybody works for her father, and she's a coder, computer design coder. And they're working on a new missile defense system, which will be an incredibly lucrative, strategically important to the United States project. And she likes to work on her boat, her motorboat, out in Gulf of Mexico, off of Naples. And she disappears off the boat. The boat is found. Her body washes up like a week later. And the father, it looks like an accident. There's nothing that can technically say it's murder. Her father suspects her husband, his son-in-law, who's this slick rich frat boy charmer. And he doesn't trust him. He thinks he killed him, but he killed her, but he doesn't know how or anything. He calls in the Locard Institute because obviously he has the money to do it. So Rachel and Ellie have to come down here, and Ellie also lived here for part of her childhood. And so introducing Florida to a non-Floridian, like Rachel, I get to work in a lot of fun things like tropical storm and the summer, because it's like late summer. And the daily downfalls and everything, and Rachel keeps saying, "Is this normal?" And Ellie's like, "Yeah, totally normal. This happens every day." So for the first time, because usually when you're a writer, it's like you just write a book and you throw it out and you send it to an editor, and they're like, "Oh, this is great. Turn it into a series." For the first time, I actually planned it as a series. So I thought I need a setup that will give them lots of flexibility, and that's of course where the private cases come in. It's like they can literally go anywhere and do anything. Like some of my ideas are I'd love to set one of the books at a beauty contest. I'd love to set one at, Disney World, a fictional version of Disney World, so I don't get sued. Maybe a Indy 500 or something like that. Just fun. You can really have fun with that. And then the characters, I thought you have to give them enough baggage, basically. I don't like characters who are emotional basket cases. That's just me. I just kind of find them annoying. So I wanted them to have baggage that's not crippling. So, so Ellie has a really interest. I come from a big family. It doesn't feel like a big family because my mother had 4 kids and then had this gap of 9 years and then had 2 more. So, and I was the last. So, 2 of them got married when I was 2, literally. So it feels like I just grew up with my sister and me, but it was actually this big family. My mother has, that's not mine. My mother had 6 in her family. My mother had 10. My father had 6. I have 145 first cousins just on my mother's side. Yeah. So, big extended family, and that's what I wanted Ellie to have. So her mother dies in what was supposedly a car accident when she was 4. Her father walked out the day after. So she grew up with her grandmother, and then, then one aunt and a couple of cousins, then a different aunt, but her uncle got PTSD. So then she moved in with another aunt, and her 2 girls, her and her husband and her 2 girls. And then in high school, she came to Naples and lived with the 2 parents who were, the 2 aunt and uncle who were doctors. And because they saw that she had an aptitude for science, so they pushed her into the science. So anyway, she's got all these cousins and aunts and uncles, and so, kind of like I do. So if I need to know, like in in What Harms You, I use like drug databases. Like doctors, so that you don't have interactions with your drugs. Can your doctor see any other meds that you're on? And so I'm texting with my cousin's daughter who's a doctor, like, can you do this? And she's like, yes and no. Like there's no one big database. I don't know if that makes you feel better or worse, but there's no one big database of every prescription that you're taking. And so she's explaining that to me, so it's handy having a huge family and all these people in different professions, because when I need something, so when my design was, so when Ellie needs something, she's got people who live in the area or they work in that field or what, so that she can call on. And then Rachel is, she has had a more stable background. She was the medical examiner in Washington, D.C., and but her younger sister, passed away, so she's raising her sister's 2-year-old. And her husband walked out on her because of that, because he didn't want a child. She's been at the Locard for like 10 years, so she's poured, 10 years of her heart and soul into this place. And she's just, loving being a mother. So when they have to travel out of town, she's like FaceTiming with the kid, and lives with her mother. So her mother's there with the child when she's not there. So, and the father, the baby was a result of a one-night stand with this father who's a Navy SEAL. He's an Army. He's in demolitions, and I can assure you that will come up somewhere in a later book. I don't know where yet. But I'm going to work that in somehow. That's why I gave him that job. And he comes back and on leave, and wants to see the child, and she's like, absolutely not. She doesn't. She just wants this man to totally go away. But he's really not a bad guy. And her mother tells her he's really not a bad guy. You get more flies with honey than vinegar, so let's just counsel a little here. And she's like, oh. Her biggest fear is that he's going to just show up someday and want to take the full custody. So she's always got that in her background. So that's a low-carb institute. That I've worked. Now, I don't know what kind of time we're at. I have a Fitbit and I switched to this like bright, oh good, thank you. I switched to this bright turquoise band. I'm like, I cannot wear that. That will totally clash. So, I was not aware of the time. So, to tell you, the hardbacks are $20. These, I have trade paperbacks of the first book, which are $10. I can take cash, credit, check. And as far as forensics go, as I said, I've worked in forensics for almost 30 years. Most of what we do in Cape Coral, obviously, is burglary, lower, not such violent crimes, thank heavens. In Cleveland, we had 2 to 3 homicides a week at that time, so, it kept pretty busy. And advice, lock your cars. Don't leave your keys, your wallet, your laptop, your purse in your cars. Vehicle burglaries is probably our most common crime. And if you have good jewelry, keep it anywhere but in a jewelry box, because that is the first place they'll go. And so that's my prepared remarks. We have plenty of time now for questions and answers. Anything about forensics, writing, anything? Yes?
Approximately how long are your books? Do you have a format like 350 pages?
Well, I generally aim for between 80 and 100,000 words.
How many pages is that?
I don't know. People always ask. I have no idea. Because I do Microsoft Word, and I go by word count. I'm kind of obsessed by word count. Yeah, I think they're generally, how many are there? Right about 300 or so pages, because of course that's going to vary depending on the font and chapters, and if you have a lot of chapter breaks, it adds some white space, can vary like that. Yes?
Do you have a specific time you write that you like to write, like early in the morning or at night or just whenever you can, or you block time?
I like to write first thing in the morning to get it done, because then I can relax for the day. Like I said, I'm obsessed by word count. So I've done different patterns over the years. It's dependent on my work schedule sometimes. Like right now I'm on a rotating shift. So I try to write like 2,000 words a day on the days I don't work. But yeah, generally first thing in the morning. But I can adjust it. I'm not one of those writers that has to have, I have to be at my desk. I can write in the car. I have literally written a scene sitting on an overturned bucket, 5-gallon bucket, at a crime scene waiting for the manager to come with the password to the video system that I have to download. So I've learned to write anywhere. I volunteer with Hope Hospice. So, I sit with patients sometimes to give the caregiver some respite so they can go out and go to the grocery store or their own doctor or whatever they need to do. So I would get a lot of writing done that way, because I'm just sitting, with the keyboard on my lap.
Do you block your stories out? Do you outline your stories? Or?
I am a plotter. You will find writers fall into plotters and pantsers. They call them pantsers because they write by the seat of their pants. They just have like an idea and they sit down and they write and they go to that and they figure it out as they go along. I have no idea how they do that. I usually plot everything out, not formally. I don't have a formal outline. I always tell myself I'm going to, and then I usually don't, but it's all usually up here. I know how it's going to begin, I know how it's going to end, I know who did it and why they did it and generally how they did it, who's going to get killed, why, and the major clues that my character is going to find. So, yes.
Do you have people that do your grunt work for you?
Do I have people that do my grunt work for me? Ha, I wish. No. I do all the grunt work myself. From, Googling stuff, research. I start at the library, I read a lot of books. I love audiobooks because I can listen to them while I'm, doing something else. Down to taking out the recycling, paying the bills, making sure the insurance is paid up. Everything. My husband cuts the grass and might take the cans from the curb to, from the house to the curb. And that's it. I do everything else. Any other questions? Yes?
When you first started your career in Ohio, did you actually help with autopsies?
No.
You didn't do that at all?
Yes, she asked when I started in Ohio, did I actually help with the autopsies? No. I was right next to the autopsy suite, and I'd be running in and out of there because I'd have the clothing and I'd be trying to match up the holes in the clothes with like the holes in the body.
Right.
Where very often you'd have either too many or not enough. But no, the people who assist with the body, like Dieners or at here, are medical legal death investigators. They are the ones that come out to the crime death scene from the medical examiners. Unlike what you see on television, the people actually, doctors actually doing the autopsy, and certainly the medical examiner or coroner, do not hardly ever come to the crime scene. They might, like a day or two later, if they're just trying to picture how this death occurred. But who comes to the crime scene is the medical examiner, or the medical examiner investigator. And they're specially trained, obviously, and they have a lot of experience in death scenes particularly. Also at the crime scene, the body is their jurisdiction. We can't touch it, move it, roll it over, check the pockets, do anything until, the detectives will usually get on the phone with the medical examiner, investigator, describe to them what we've got. They will decide whether they're coming out or not. If they say they're not going to come, they'll just send the body snatchers, ambulance crew out to transport. They usually just call them transport. If they might send them out, and then there'll still be a medical examiner office case. They'll go there, but the actual investigator won't come out. At that point, we can turn the body over and examine them, do our own little examination, and do whatever we need to do. Or they may just go straight to the funeral home. The medical examiner might say that really doesn't qualify as one of our cases. They can just go straight to the funeral home. Everything around the body is the jurisdiction of the investigating agency, the police department, sheriffs, fire marshal, whoever. And we can do whatever we want out there. Sometimes we will leave stuff, especially in like the case of a suicide and things like that. We will leave the gun and the casing and everything so the investigator can see it before we move it. So just, yes?
Yeah, have you ever watched Dexter?
Oh yeah. We liked Dexter a lot. My husband and I are friends with the guy who wrote it, who used to live here, and I was on a panel with him.
He's also written Dexter the musical now, which might be another. Is him.
Oh, I saw that in the paper. I'm like, I don't quite understand that, but okay.
It's pretty weird.
Yeah. Well, Jeff is in a band. I think he plays guitar for years. Jeff Lindsay wrote the series, and they used to live here. They've since moved full-time to North Carolina, but he is also married to Hillary Hemingway, who used to write a gardening column for the News Press and is the niece of Ernest Hemingway. Yes?
Who are some other authors you read and admire?
Tess Gerritsen, Lisa Gardner, I think is really one of my favorite. I used to read a lot of Tammy Hoag, Jeffrey Deaver, Riley Sager. I love Riley Sager. Did you have a question? Nope? Okay. Okay, wait, there's somebody in. Yes?
How long does it really take to get a DNA?
Oh, how long does it take to get DNA results? That all depends on the lab and their backlog. We send like routine stuff, like maybe a burglary and somebody, which often happens, they break a window, they cut themselves on the broken glass. We can send that off 6 months, maybe. Oh, at least. And then sometimes they'll email us and say, do you still need this? Is this still an open case? We'll say, yes, we still need it. 6 months after that, they'll so they've gotten better. Florida Department of Law Enforcement has really gotten better, but it can take a long time. Now, there is a private lab that's certified and acceptable in court and everything, called DNA Labs International over in Deerfield Beach. So if it's something that the state attorney wants really, really fast, and they're willing to pay for it, we can send it to them. They can do, I think, like the fastest is like 3 days turnaround, and you'll probably be $20,000 to $30,000 to pay for that, at least. Yeah. Yes.
Have you ever written any of your friends in as characters?
I've ever written only one time, because I normally never do that, because my characters, I need them to do certain things, and if I'm basing it on a real person, I might get to a point where, like, well, they wouldn't do that, or they wouldn't say that, and that would stymie me, so I don't do that. But yeah, in the Gardner Mentor series, my friend Carol, who was a retired EMT from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who did contract work for us for a while, cleaning up our fingerprints on the computer. I wrote her in as the DNA analyst, because it was just a small part, but she really enjoyed being in it. But yeah, normally no. Yes.
Do you have a personal favorite book that you've written, and have any of your books made the bestseller list?
Evidence of Murder made the bestseller list, the extended bestseller list. That was the only time I was on the New York Times bestseller list, which ironically, I guess you could say, is my least favorite of all the ones I've written. It just worked out that way. But my favorites are, as I said, I really like What Harms You. But my favorites so far is the first in the last 2 series, Takeover and That Darkness, are pretty much neck and neck for my favorites. Any other question? Sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, Nicholas. So if you go to a scene and lots of blood, somebody's been murdered, can you really actually clean the blood? Like, does blood really, I know they say Javits, bleach, whatever. I'm just, I watch a lot of CSI and all that sort of stuff. I'm just wondering if, since you're forensic.
How, you mean clean it so
do they have
that...
like a cleanup crew? Like, is that for real? Somebody goes and cleans up blood from a house?
Yeah, not us. We don't do cleanup, sorry, that's not in our job. But yeah, there's fire service is the one I'm aware of around here, and they do cleanup for everything. Crime scenes, fires, floods, any kind of problem you have, they'll come in and clean it up. If your house has been flooded and it's mud from end to end, I think you can call them too. But yes, yeah, there are services you can call. They're not free. I don't really know what they charge. It's probably not that bad, but yeah, if you have blood all over, then bleach will take care of it in terms of DNA, both if you're trying to cover up a crime or if you just want to make sure you don't have any germs or communicable diseases around. Bleach is always a good thing. But if it's like upholstery or something, you're probably just going to have to throw it out. Yes?
Have you had an event in an old book that somebody did in real life?
Mean like somebody copying?
Yes.
No. Has anyone ever copied a crime in my book in real life? No. No, I don't. They're not that. Not that I'm aware of it. But they probably wouldn't write me and tell me, so I guess I wouldn't really know. But I don't think so. I don't think I'm quite that popular. Yes.
Are any of these murders close to what you've seen in person?
Are any of these murders close to what I've seen in person? Yeah, I try to be as accurate as possible. So, most of what I'm describing is, yes, what I've seen in real life.
Yeah.
So I try and...
Hearing about you coming, I went to the library and got this book.
Uh-huh.
And I just dived into it, didn't read anything cover to cover. And I'm a few pages in, and I'm like, this person evidently has a science background. And I look at your biography, like, whoa, no wonder. It's very interesting, though, with all the actual technical terms. Like, I love that.
Oh, thank you. But, I do, not every single detail. There are still things I have to research. Like I've never seen anyone actually use chloroform in real life as I used in like my very first book. So, then I had to discover that you don't ever put it on a cloth and put it over someone's face because it'll leave burns. It's acidic. I mean, it'll burn. So you had to put when they used it for like in ancient times for like surgery or something. That's when they put like a cone over there and put it up here. So they're breathing it in, but it's not directly on the skin. Yes.
Yes, DNA, if it's old case and the person's done a file and you're trying to analyze it or whatever, the forensics, how often does the police department use like Ancestry.com to look for relatives to see if they get an idea of who this person is?
Oh, how often do police
Yeah.
departments use genetics? I forget,
Yeah.
I'm losing the term
genetics.
exactly, but forensic genetics, and where they trace their ancestral, when they
Yeah.
trace back your. I have no idea because in my department we haven't done it yet that I'm aware of. It's very interesting. I was reading the book on Barbara Ray Venter's. First, how she found the Golden State Killer, and so it's very interesting. It's very time consuming. Mostly, what they use it for are people, unidentified people or people who were like adopted, and want to know, who they are, or people who were sometimes kidnapped as children, and don't know who they were kidnapped from. And that's usually what they use it for. But yeah, it's very interesting, but very time consuming. It's like you have to like test the one person's genetics, and then you have to find like relatives of them, and then you have to go all the way back through their family trees. And obviously you need their cooperation to do that, which most people do. Find where they have a common ancestor. Then you have to take that common ancestor and go all the way down through their descendants, and then try and narrow it down to who's likely to be the person you're looking for. So it's really time-consuming and precise work, but it's interesting. Okay, anything else? So,
Is there really a low-card institute here in the States?
no, I made up the Low Card Institute. At least not that I'm aware of. As I said, there's different institutes for, I'm sure, research. There's different companies. There's like the two main ones are like Tritech and Ron Smith and Associates that do training in all sorts of different forensic topics. And they're certified, and they count toward your certification. Like I'm certified in crime scene analysis and latent print examination. And the credits you get from the continuing ed are part of recertifying, count for recertifying. So there's a number of places that do training. Yes, you would have.
It must be gratifying when earlier you spoke about, there's 3 holes in the shirt and go match into the body, and as the investigation moves forward, you had a big part in finding out who the murderer is, or who, or what happened to the person.
Must be gratifying to be able to reconstruct a case. Yeah, sometimes it is. As I said, often in forensic science, it's not like one thing I find proves beyond a doubt that this person. Most just like indicates. This indicates that we could put this person at the scene, or this person ran over here because you can see his footprints. And, that kind of thing. And lots of times when I have really great evidence, it winds up not mattering for one reason or another. Like I used to do hairs and fibers, which is pretty dying art, but had it's a really tragic case. This guy stabbed this woman in her driveway, and I think he was a boyfriend or ex-boyfriend, and her college-age daughter came home and found her. Just sad. But she was wearing like this aqua acrylic sweater, and he was wearing like this orange cotton sweatshirt or something. So I found like orange cotton fibers on her and aqua acrylic fibers on him. But it didn't wind up mattering much because they found him asleep in his pickup, I think with her wallet on the front seat with him. So, so often, things work out like, I got really great evidence and it means nothing, Yes.
So, since publishers don't accept unsolicited manuscripts, how did you break into this?
Some publishers do. accept unsolicited manuscripts. They're all different. You have to research them all. It takes a lot of research. And I tried to get an agent by my 6th, I think the book I finally got published was my 9th full-length novel. And as I said, I'd been a secretary for, 10 years. So I was very organized. I had like a 6-page landscape, single-spaced Excel spreadsheet of agents. And I researched them all. You got to research them all. Make sure they have legitimate sales, that they're actually selling clients' books. And I had narrowed it down at that time. I mean, this was 2000, the early 2000s. So I narrowed it down to just agents in New York, maybe Chicago or LA. But I mean, if they're in the middle of Arizona, you need, for traditional publishing, it's like I wanted an agent that's actually going out to lunch with these editors, which may not be the case anymore in today's world now that, because email submissions were just getting started then. I was still doing everything snail mail. So I would just send out 10 letters at a time. And, but at that time, like I said, CSI played a big part, I believe, because they were all just looking for the next Patricia Cornwell, which I turned out not to be, to everyone's disappointment, especially mine. But yeah, I would just send out 10 at a time. And so I didn't have an in with her. She was nobody I knew. Nobody I knew personal. I was just another query letter that showed up on her desk. Mm-hmm. Okay, a few more, and then we better close it down.
I was going to ask if you watch Forensic Files.
Yeah, I watch Forensics Files. Yes.
Do you get called to testify in court?
Yes. Do I get called to testify in court? Yes. A lot more in Ohio, where everything was pretty much everything we did was homicide. Even if we just, what I usually have to do is take in the victim's clothing at a minimum. That's what I'd be there for, is to just say this was what the person was wearing when they came to the coroner's office. Or lots of times more, more detailed than that, if I would present the DNA evidence or the. So yeah, I testified a lot in that. Down here, hardly ever, and it really took a nosedive after COVID. I don't even think I've been to court since COVID, except for sentencing hearings, which is just pretty much paperwork, just proving that these fingerprints are the same fingerprints from people convicted earlier, so that they can get a tougher sentence, basically, because it shows they have a history. And so, like I said, most of our crimes are burglaries, and the people, I don't know if they're dismissing them or pleading out or what, or I think a lot of them, they take a plea or they reduce the sentence or something, but we wind up not going to court very often. But when we do, it's nerve-wracking and awful. We all hate it. Okay, anything, one or two more here?
You mentioned that it takes 6 months to do the DNA analysis. What's the hang up there? Why does it take so long? A shortage of people? Or
Yeah, it's, there's time and resources. And Florida Department of Law Enforcement, they have a couple different offices that do DNA, but it's still the entire state of Florida. So.
So they're just only a few labs that do it?
Yeah, it's, you can only do so much in a day, and they have a lot of samples. And also, usually you're doing at least 3, because very often you have the scene, you have the victim, and the suspect. So it's not 1 sample, it's 3, very often. So it's just a time-consuming process. Yeah, yes, you had a question? Yeah.
Yes, do you get a chance to meet with your editor and your publisher and agent in person?
I have, but I have to go to New York City to do that, so I don't very often.
Have you seen a lot more increase in fentanyl and drugs?
Oh yeah, a lot of fentanyl overdoses. It's actually slowing down now, but yeah, right. It was very, very bad there when fentanyl first hit the market. Yeah, they had a lot of deaths from that. Okay, if that is it, then thanks again for inviting me.